Hello, I'm Nick Cioli,
And I'm Jack Cioli.
and this is the first Super Cioli Bros podcast of 2015. In this episode, we're going to be talking about Justice League Throne of Atlantis, which is DC's most recent animated movie. It came out a week ago as of this recording, so the 27th of January is when it came out.
Nick, you and I have watched a lot of these movies. I believe I've watched every one of them.
Yeah, there's like, how many are there? There's like 20 DC animated movies, somewhere around there.
Yeah, here, I'm going to pull up the actual figure. But while I do that, yeah, so this is their most recent, and it's the second one in a line of continuity based on the New 52 Justice League series.
Yeah, the first one, Justice League War, came out last like June or something? It came out a
No,
while ago.
it was Justice League War came out January of 2014.
Oh, okay, okay.
So yeah, it's been an entire year since the previous one, and
There had been a previous DC movie, just DC animated movie, just not one in this line of continuity.
right. So this is the 22nd of these straight to DVD movies, and
Okay.
I enjoy quite a bit of them.
Yeah, you've
Like
seen
I
them
think,
all. I think I haven't seen like five or six, and there are some. I mean, there's some really good ones.
yeah. So I generally pick these up uh, the day they come out because I enjoy them so much. But the past few have not quite done it for me, and Justice League War in particular is one of my least favorites. Uh, and I think it is because it's starting from a flawed premise in that it's based on the New 52 Justice League, which we've probably made our thoughts on pretty clear at this point.
Yeah, that's the biggest the biggest downside is it's basing itself off of really bad source material.
But so, uh, this being the sequel to that, I wasn't super jazzed about it. I was excited by the prospect of a movie that focuses on Aquaman just because he doesn't usually get that spotlight unless you're making jokes about him. So I kind of liked the idea of, giving one of these lesser known or not lesser known, but one of these rarely focused on characters a time in the spotlight.
Hmm.
But the trailers for it made it seem real like real serious business, and I don't know if I can always get behind that with stuff like this.
Yeah, like one of the more recent DC animated movies, I think it was the second to most recent one, was Assault on Arkham, which was a Suicide Squad movie, and that makes sense being dark because it's the Suicide Squad. But
Yeah,
this is
and
the
it's
Justice League.
also Yeah, and it's also Assault on Arkham is set in the universe of the Arkham Asylum video games, which are also pretty more adult and serious themed. So that, yeah, like you said, that makes plenty of sense. But this is the Justice League, which is, I don't know. I mean, you can't. I think when you try and shoehorn the Justice League and characters like Superman and Batman and the Flash and Green Lantern and all these really goofy concepts, and you put them all together, and then trying to force that into something really serious and grim, uh, it just doesn't work out. Like it doesn't. It just feels wrong, you know?
Hmm. So we're gonna run through the plot and then kind of react to it. I looked up this movie on IMDb, and there are some funny goofs. Do you want me to read them now or as we come across them?
Ooh. Let's read them as we come across them.
Okay. The first one is right at the beginning. So the movie opens with a U.S. submarine. The text on the screen, like the little what's that called? Chiron or something. The location Chiron says that they are in the Marianas Trench. And then there's a line of dialogue where the captain says they're checking out a disturbance in the middle of the Atlantic. The Marianas Trench is in the Pacific Ocean.
Is it really?
Yep.
Wow. That's beautiful.
The goof says the Marianas Trench is in the Pacific Ocean, quite literally on the other side of the world.
All right, so yeah, so we start off with the submarine, and and we get kind of a an intense bit where the radar operator sees some blips coming their way, and the twist is that they're like people sized, and it's a whole bunch of them, and then they end up getting attacked. And yeah, so then it sinks and everything. And the whole time I'm watching this, having viewed many, many superhero cartoons and movies and read quite a few comics, it really feels like that classic premise of putting something in danger at the beginning so that you can introduce the superheroes saving the day.
Hmm.
But that does not happen.
Nope. Everybody on that submarine dies.
I think that's like a perfect little microcosm of just this movie trying to be really serious in a way that feels like it undermines the characters they're playing with. Like when you start off your movie with something that the heroes couldn't stop and people died because of it, and they don't really seem all that concerned about that. It's real weird. Like it doesn't really fit with these characters in particular.
Yeah, and I mean, it's disappointing because as we later see that like half these characters can go underwater, so like they could have saved them.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they were aware of it. Like, that's the argument that people watching this movie who are fine with it would say is that they had no way of knowing. But, like, just from a narrative standpoint, like, to open up your movie with this catastrophic event, like, that sets the tone. And I'm sure that was intentional and that they wanted that really serious and grim tone, just based on what we saw in the 50 some minutes after this. But it's just it's something that I think when you try and force superheroes into this really serious, like, oh man, this submarine went down and now they couldn't stop it, so they have to investigate what's going on, and oh my gosh, it's all very, very serious. It just feels wrong. Like I can't say that enough. It doesn't ring true.
Yeah, and it's not even really like necessary because the point of the scene is to establish like this mysterious threat, which from the name we all know is Atlantis. But it could work just as easily if the submarine gets attacked and it starts sinking, and then like Superman comes down there and saves people, but then there's still the mystery of who attacked the submarine and why.
Yeah, that's a really good point that I didn't even consider. But that would have been a much better way to start this movie because one, I'm instantly on the side of Superman, which is not the case for most of this movie, and two, it gives our heroes a chance to save people while not necessarily undermining like the mystery that you're trying to set up with this movie, you know?
Yeah, and it's another thing, another part of a problem that I've kind of noticed. I don't think we've talked about this, but in a lot of recent superhero stuff, there isn't much saving people. Like there's you see the superheroes fighting the bad guy, but they never like save anybody. Like that's one of the problems with Man of Steel, which we've talked about, is yeah, he fights the Kryptonians, but we only ever see him save that like one helicopter pilot.
Yeah, and like Lois Lane a bunch of times.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that is something that I really like about superheroes in general is when they're just kind of doing their regular day-to-day saving stuff. Like that's why it's it's almost like a cliche or like formulaic at this point to open up your story with like a generic save the day moment for your superhero and then go into kind of the more plot driven supervillain type stuff. But like it really does it lets you know what kind of people these guys are. Like they're not just sitting around waiting for like Doctor Doom to show up with a giant laser gun. Like they're also spending their regular time helping normal Joes in out of like dangerous situations that don't involve costumed crazy people.
Yeah, it's what I've called in the past casual superheroing,
Yeah.
which is one of the good things in a lot of the Flash episodes because he does that.
So next we cut to what where is it? It's like the Justice League headquarters, right?
Yeah, it's at Star Labs, I think in Philadelphia. It was a weird city. I remember thinking it was a weird city, but it might not have been
Yeah.
Philadelphia.
So we're in Star Labs, and it's sort of supposed to be like the new Justice League headquarters, because at the end of Justice League War is when they officially decided to become a team, basically. But nobody's there except for Cyborg, and there's a joke involving the name being put on the door and it being the wrong name, which is a tie-in to a joke from the end of War. But Steve Trevor is a character walking through. He seems to be some kind of like liaison guy for the government between the Justice League or something.
Yeah,
and
the same role
coming
he
in.
served at the beginning of the New 52 Justice League comic, like a liaison between the Justice League and the U.S. government.
But yeah, so he walks in to what? He's there to tell them about the submarine, right?
Yeah.
So Cyborg's the only one who's there, who we can tell. And Cyborg, is he talking to that lady at this point? No, he's having like a dream or something, right?
He was having a dream, like a nightmare, but he did talk to that lady, and then he ignored a phone call from his dad.
Oh yeah, that's right.
There's a lot in this movie that easily could be cut out, and his thing with his dad is definitely one of them.
Yeah, his thing with his dad seems to be a carryover from War, because that was sort of a central part of that movie. But it doesn't. You're right. It doesn't really contribute anything in this. Like, I had totally forgotten that he did that he canceled that call from his dad.
Yeah, and there's another bigger subplot. No, I think he mentions something at the very end, I think, about like, or maybe in the middle, that lady he talks to from time to time says something like, "I'll call your dad," and then he says like, "No, don't do that." But that's one of like 2 or 3 subplots that I think we both could do without, and the other one is coming up fairly soon. But anyway, yeah. Cyborg decides that he'll go out and check the submarine out alone, because he says to Trevor, like, despite what you and the government may want to think, there is no Justice League. Which, like, these people are all...
Yeah, what's the point of the last movie?
Yeah, and these people are all... Well, even at the end, they're... I think Green Lantern said something like, "We're not a team," like when they were being introduced to the world. But,
right.
like, all these people are superheroes. They have no reason to not want to work together.
Yeah, it's very symptomatic of this thing that you see a lot in like superhero-related media outside comics, which is they feel that they need to provide like an extensive background explanation for like every single thing. So you'll get like a movie, for instance, where like the entire movie happens, and then at the end the character becomes the superhero that the movie is ostensibly about. And so that's what we're seeing here is Justice League War was theoretically, it was advertised as the coming together of these heroes, Mm-hmm. There's this massive global apocalyptic event they all come together to help save the day against. And so it seems like that's all you would need. And then you could have the team stuff happen, and it would be really interesting. But instead, they kind of just decide to prolong that moment and keep dragging it out and dragging it out. Like the next one, I wouldn't be surprised if they're still like hemming and hawing over it.
Yeah, because like it's almost at the end of this movie that they finally decide, hey, we should actually be a team.
It is the very end of this movie where someone's like, we should be a team, and someone, I think maybe Batman, says, I had this idea for a satellite watchtower, and the next movie, I mean, I hope it just starts with that, and them all being up there and just doing the team thing, but I really don't think it will.
Yeah, like it's taken 2 Justice League movies for the Justice League to exist.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous New 52 bullshit.
So, what happens after the Cyborg scene? I can't really remember.
Well, I can't. Yeah, that's when we cut to Arthur Curry being like seemingly drunk, kind of like a homeless man. But this is where goof number 2 comes in. read it. I read it direct. A drunk Arthur is talking to slash fighting to protect and free a red lobster in a seafood shack. There is no instance where a live lobster will have a red shell. The red shell only occurs after contact with boiling water. Thus, either the lobster was dead and Arthur was hallucinating, or the artist made an enormous coloring mistake.
Yeah, I mean, I think sort of that doesn't totally apply because that when you're working in cartoons, you're kind of immediately working with icons and kind of simplified versions of things we know about. So, like, a lobster being red, I don't think is that huge of a deal. But that is kind of funny to think about.
I don't know, but I mean, at the same time, people know what lobsters look like. So if it was like orange, then I don't think people would have been confused. But yeah, it is shorthand,
I feel
so
like people would have been confused if it was orange.
I guess I have a higher expectation of people.
But so, yeah, so this scene opens up with him, and he's all like disheveled looking, and he's got this weird like orange vest on, right?
Yeah, like if I remember correctly, it's kind of like what Marty McFly wears in Back to the Future, like
Yeah,
one of those life jacket vests.
yeah. So he's sitting there, and he's like at the bar drinking, and he's just talking to this lobster in the tank, and the what is it? The chef like reaches his hand in and pulls it out, and he like flips out. He's like, "Hey, I was talking to him," and some like giant like bodybuilder heavyweight boxer shows up and is like, "I'm gonna eat that," and starts like throwing punches.
Yeah, and like you pointed this out, uh, like they just want to have a meal, and that is explicitly what that lobster is there for. It's not like they're taking it from an aquarium or something.
Yeah, so like, and your counterpoint to this is that they totally escalated it, which is 100% true. But what it amounts to is like, because Arthur ends up fighting like 9 guys, it feels like.
Yeah, I think it's more like five, but they never go down. So it seems like, I guess they keep repeatedly going down, but then coming back up after a different shot. So it seems like there's more of them than there are.
So yeah, so Arthur Curry fights this entire bar over this lobster, and they are one, they're all giant, like ripped to shit dudes, and like after they some people throw some punches, they end up like beating the shit out of him inside, and then he like flips them all off, not flips them off, he throws them all off, and then like throws some dudes out the window, and then they take it outside, and then they start picking up like crowbars and shit, and like it becomes like murder town.
Yeah, escalated especially quickly after that.
And it really is super. It's a very strange like premise to start a fight on, because if you just jump into the fight, you just see him fighting a bunch of like mean-looking thuggy guys who are apparently trying to straight up murder him. But the beginning of the thing is him not wanting them to eat the thing that they just ordered in an established restaurant.
Yeah, and like it comes to the point where like the lead thug guy pulls a knife and like stabs him in the chest, but since he's Aquaman, the knife just breaks. But like he was totally willing to just kill this guy.
Yeah, yeah, it is absurd, and that's another thing that trying to make these movies like super serious and like realistic or whatever, you end up with situations like this where it's way more absurd than just having them be like regular heroic superheroes, you know?
Hmm.
But yeah, so he ends up saving the lobster, and he tosses it into the water after this big brawl. And he's real angsty. He's like way angstier than even Batman is right now.
Yeah, we briefly see that he's being watched by someone who eagle-eyed comic readers will know as Mara, but we don't know who she is at this point.
Yeah, but one thing we do have to point out, and this is amazing, is she is just wearing her regular costume type deal, which is like this blue and green unitard kind of thing. Uh, and over top of that, she's wearing a trench coat and a hat.
Yeah. So like at the end when Aquaman, leaves, like walks away because he's not really Aquaman yet. She like goes to the edge of the pier or something, takes that off, and then just dives back into the ocean.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty amazing because it paints it as her being like totally incognito, but there is no goddamn way she would not have been the weirdest looking thing just ever.
Yeah. So then after that, we cut to Cyborg checking out the submarine. He finds out that like the missiles were taken away, and then he gets attacked by Atlanteans, and then he like kind of gets roughed up a bit, but escapes.
Yeah, so they're like moving real fast, so we don't really get a clear shot of them. And then one of them like plunges their like freaky looking dagger into his shoulder, and then he escapes.
And then I think this is where he's like getting repaired by that lady, and then I think this is where she says, "Should I call your dad?" And he says no. But he's trying to assemble the Justice League, and like eventually they start coming. But one of the we briefly missed a scene. I think it's before Cyborg, before we cut to Cyborg in the submarine. But Superman and Wonder Woman are sitting on uh, the Pantheon up on the Acropolis
Oh
in
yeah.
Athens, and then they have this really annoying conversation, and then they make out in the sky, just like that one cover.
Yeah, so
And then,
I
because then we get Flash and Shazam back with Cyborg, and then they say that they'll go get Superman and Wonder Woman, and then we see them on a date.
right. So yeah, I this is the subplot of the movie that I think we might hate the most.
Yeah, because one, Superman and Wonder Woman is not a pairing that I like, and two, it serves even less purpose than Cyborg's relationship with his dad.
Well, I would say they both serve the same amount of purpose, which is completely nothing. But I don't like this very much at all. But mostly because the sort of the thematic explanation for their relationship, both in this movie and in the comics, it seems, is that they are both quote unquote outsiders within their communities, and so then when they meet each other, they develop kind of a mutual understanding of how that feels, and that's where their relationship comes from. But that is a fundamental misunderstanding of both of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And it's
So,
just like that scene in the diner. I think was supposed to be like cute. It was not.
well, even before that, there's a part on the Acropolis place where Wonder Woman starts talking, like getting real sad and talking about how, like asking Superman if he ever feels alone. And he like looks her dead in the eye and says the exact opposite of what Superman would actually answer that question with.
Yeah.
And he says like, yeah, all the time.
Yeah. Like
No.
they're stuck on this thing where Superman, is an alien and he can't get over that. But like a writer that we both like, Chris Sims says is he's not an alien. He's an Earthling essentially, because this is the only life he's ever known.
Yeah. Like there's
He's
literally no reason for him to pine after this, and he does it again with when he's talking to Aquaman at one point.
Yeah, I didn't
But
like that.
yeah, me either. Also, it makes no sense, and we'll get to it later. But he he would not be pining after this lost civilization that he was never a part of when he grew up here with like a loving family and like made good friends and has a good career with nice coworkers that he's best friends with. Like there's absolutely no reason for Superman to say that he always feels alone. Like sure, maybe you could argue that he, because of everything he can do, he feels set apart from them, but that's still just that's what we would project onto that. But Superman over the years has like been crafted to the point where that's not him. Like he recognizes, and good writers recognize, that he isn't his powers, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we don't like that bit. But so there is then it goes to, we go back to the Justice League headquarters after Cyborg puts out the call, and only Shazam and the Flash have shown up.
Yeah, so then they go out and get the rest. They use a boom tube to get to Superman and Wonder Woman, and they're on a date. They eventually come. I forget how Green Lantern comes, but he does. And
Well, Green Lantern, they actually get Green Lantern first because Flash goes there first. It's the first place he goes to. He goes to
oh right, the air place, the Air Force
yeah,
Base.
Ferris Air Force Base or whatever. But he pulls the trick on Green Lantern with the lady's number or whatever.
Oh yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, like I think there's some decent moments in this, and most of them happen to be with Flash and Green Lantern, I think. But yeah, so they pick up Green Lantern, and then they go get Superman and Wonder Woman, who are on a date at a diner, because what Superman's answer to the "do you always feel alone" thing is that he does, but that he has a way of dealing with it, and it's his Clark Kent disguise, where he puts on the glasses and lives like a normal human being. And so he takes out Wonder Woman, and she gets glasses too, and they pretend to be regular people. And Lois Lane crashes their date.
Yeah,
And I'm not sure what the point of this scene was, because
I think it's to establish this stupid rivalry, because Lois is into Clark, and then she sees that he's on a date.
and if that is the case, if it's meant to establish this rivalry, then they have put me 100% with Lois, because here's what we've seen from both of them. Wonder Woman is kind of angsty and whiny and boring. And Lois Lane comes in, and she's sassy and doesn't give a shit what anybody thinks, and she's throwing all this crap at Wonder Woman and stuff, and it's awesome.
Yeah, and just to be clear, she doesn't know it's Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman is in a civilian disguise.
Right. But yeah, so she just has way more personality to her, and she's way more fun to watch than Wonder Woman is in this movie. And so it felt to me like maybe a mistake on their part, because they don't in any way try and really sell the fact that it's a triangle, they just have Superman with Wonder Woman, and then they just have this scene, basically.
I think the only other attempt to make it a triangle is when Wonder Woman saves Lois and Jimmy Olsen later during the big fight. But that, it's not even clear what that's supposed to mean in the terms of any potential triangle. Wonder Woman's not gonna just let the bad guys murder her competition. Is that supposed to mean something to us?
Yeah, so what this scene feels like to me, what I get out of it is they're showing us, one, the more traditional, love interest for Superman, and two, she happens to be way more interesting, engaging, and entertaining than the one they're trying to put him with, and then that's it. They don't try and show why he should be with Wonder Woman versus Lois. They just show these two people in this one scene together, and it's very clear that one of them is boring and lame, and the other one is awesome.
Yeah. So then after that, we cut back to the meeting room. Only Batman isn't there. Green Lantern goes and gets him. Nothing really important from there. We can just skip over that.
Well, that's kind of a fun scene.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we're at 32 minutes, and we're 32 minutes in. 32 minutes into the podcast, 15 minutes into the movie. So let's not dwell on things that we don't really need to.
Okay, fine.
So then once they're all together, they check out. The sub has been raised from the bottom of the ocean. They check it out. They realize that for some reason they think it was dark side, but then they realize it wasn't somehow. I forget how.
Don't they have the weapon, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So they narrow it down to being this potential Atlantean thing, and they're kind of all skeptical, which makes no goddamn sense.
Well, see, what I think the gist is, and well, not even what I think, what is clearly kind of established from this scene is that, uh, 7 people out of the Justice League. How many people are in the Justice League? Well, anyway, the only person who seems to know that Atlantis exists is Wonder Woman, because everyone else like scoffs at it pretty much. Which
Yeah, and just so we know, the people who scoff at it are a guy from another planet, a guy who works for an intergalactic police force that is populated with beings from thousands of different planets. It makes no sense.
yeah. Um, so then they split up. Batman and Superman are gonna go meet with like a academic whose expertise is Atlantis, and then the rest are gonna go find Atlantis. And then we finally cut to a real Atlantis scene, which is Orm.
Right.
What?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Orm is the prince of Atlantis, and Black Manta, who at this point is just like kind of his associate. Uh, People who know established comic continuity know that Black Manta is essentially a terrorist, but I guess at this point that hasn't really happened yet. So they meet with Orm's mother, the Queen, and they kind of argue about um, if they should go to war with the surface world because of what happened during Justice League War when Darkseid attacked. Um, I think Orm and Black Manta leave, and then the Queen talks to Mara, because Mara's her bodyguard, right?
Yeah, so Mara is I believe she's the captain of the guard for Atlantis, and in particular for the Queen. One thing I want to go back to, you said the thing about Black Manta being like a terrorist. I don't know that that is meant to be anything related to this incarnation. Like, what I found really confusing is he clearly is not Atlantean because he requires this high-tech scuba suit to be down there with them, but they don't ever explain why he is affiliated with them at all. Like, he just happens to be Prince Orm's like right-hand man, but it's
Yeah,
it's just because he's the only other Aquaman villain basically.
yeah. It is weird now that you mention that. I didn't think about that, but Orm has like a visceral hate for surface dwellers, but his best friend assistant is a surface dweller. But who
Yeah,
knows?
it's really weird, and it's very clearly just this weak, uh, kind of forced connection they're putting in because Aquaman only has two quote unquote well-known villains. One of them is his evil half brother, and the other one is Black Manta. And so they were like, well, we should probably put both of them in this movie, I guess.
Yeah, I wonder if Black Manta is in the comic book storyline. I'm not going to read it and find out, but I
Yeah,
wonder.
no, that wouldn't be worth it.
But so the Queen asks Mara to bring Arthur, who's Aquaman, back to Atlantis because he was the product of an affair that Atlanta had with a surface dweller. Atlanta? I don't know, the Queen. I forget how to pronounce her name. But
I never knew what her name was.
but he was the child of a affair that she had with a surface dweller. And this is something that we talked about before she married the king, which means that he has literally no claim to the throne because
Yeah,
he's
I
not
found
of
this.
royal blood. Because the king has the royal blood. He marries the queen, and then the queen has Orm. So Orm is the one descended from the king. Like when you hear about like bastards claiming the throne in like the ancient world and the medieval world, they were always the son of the king with like not the queen or not the king's original wife. It's never the wife having an affair with someone else. And even when it is,
Yeah,
it's usually while she's the queen. Like essentially, the queen had Arthur before she even became royalty. No claim.
yeah, because there's specifically a line where it he mentions Orm mentions her like indiscretion because she was promised to the king, is how he puts it, which definitely means that they were not yet married, and so she just had this kid who then she just arbitrarily decides is the new king.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how little sense it makes,
But then, so while she's
and
gone, oh,
it's actually yeah. I was just gonna say it's another instance of that like trying really hard to come up with like plausible explanations for all this stuff to happen when what you end up with is way dumber than some like than if you try and come up with just like a silly like easier explanation for it, you know? Like if Aquaman just is like the long lost, you know, heir to the throne or whatever, that seems way easier than jumping through all these hoops to explain why he's not there, you know? Like
yeah. Like it,
developing an extensive backstory about why he's part of the surface world instead of in Atlantis leads you to inevitably make it so that he actually has no claim to the throne that this movie is entirely about.
yeah. So while Mara is going to get Arthur, Black Manta uses his ship and like somehow changes it into a submarine. I was a little unclear on what happened there, but then he uses the missiles that were stolen from the submarine at the beginning of the movie to bomb Atlantis, setting up like the motivation for them to go to war with the surface world.
Right, so it looked like it was kind of like a hologram sort of deal.
Yeah.
So
So
he like
then,
masked his ship to look like a regular U.S. submarine, and then he used those missiles to bomb like a village or whatever.
yeah. So then we cut to Arthur. Arthur's in his is in the lighthouse where he apparently lived with his dad. And then that Atlantis expert shows up and is murdered right in front of him by some Atlantean soldiers. And
Right.
then Arthur kind of fights them for a little bit, and then Mara shows up and saves him. They
Yeah.
kind of fight
So
him
this
together.
fight, the fight with him and the soldiers is actually pretty cool. Like, there's a lot of they basically destroy the shit out of his house, but like it's a pretty neat fight. Like, there's some good moves in there, and then Mira shows up and like cold murders them all.
Yeah, like what her powers look like, or what they look like in Young Justice, but like to compare it to people who might not have seen that, it's basically water bending. But like
Yeah, she can control and manipulate water.
she throws like water picks which turn to ice through these people's faces, and then
Well,
like at one point
this
she
one,
cuts someone's head off. It's very
yeah. Well,
brutal.
this scene is not that scene yet, but this one right now is when she just rains at like a sky full of water arrows on them, and they graphically show us them piercing them and being killed.
Yeah, and like we see blood and shit.
Yeah, it is excessive. That's what we'll be talking about that a lot. But there is a lot of excessive violence in this movie. In
Yeah.
this movie about the Justice League.
So Batman and Superman go to that academic's house. Nothing really important happens there. They just find out that he went to the lighthouse, so that's how they end up going there. What else? What happens next? Is that when the Queen people start asking like petitioning the Queen to go to war, and then she says that she'll meet with the Justice League? Is that what happened next?
Maybe. I thought there was a scene where the Justice League helps Mira and Arthur fight all these guys, and
Yeah,
that's where
that
we get her throwing water daggers into dudes' faces and then cutting a guy's head off.
yeah. And like I get the point that she is a soldier and that she is not part of the Justice League, but this is still a Justice League movie, and these people are her countrymen.
Also, nobody gives a shit.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Not a
nobody
single
in the
member of the
Justice League.
Justice League says, "Hey, stop that."
Yeah, hey, stop murdering these people right in front of us. And like
Yeah,
really, when they arrive, they shouldn't have any idea what's going on. So they like objectively, they should see the person killing people and probably fight her.
yeah. They should probably handle everyone there except for Arthur, who they know they're there to protect. You know,
Yeah,
because they found that out at the guy's house. So yeah, what should have happened there is the Justice League should have shown up, saved Arthur, and taken down everyone else, including and almost specifically the lady decapitating dudes.
yeah. So I think this is when we see the Queen saying that she's going to go meet with the Justice League. Orm isn't all about that. He reveals that he knows about Arthur Curry, and this is where he gets pissed that she, was promised to the king, who is his dad, but she, had an affair with this surface dweller. And then she says that she knows that he and Black Manta were actually the people who attacked Atlantis, and then she just very stupidly stands right between them, like begging to be killed. And then she is killed.
Yeah, so uh, this is another part that doesn't really get explained very well in the later parts of the movie. But so they are in her chambers alone, and Orm stabs her in the through the chest from the back with this one of those freaky knives, and murders her. And then later, he assumes the throne under the explanation that she was killed by surface dwellers?
Yeah, like how on earth was she killed by a surface dweller?
Yeah, like are her people, like are Atlanteans do they have like the lowest IQ possible?
It's all
Because
that pressure from the ocean melting their brains.
Wasn't her private meeting with Orm like right after she was talking to just everybody?
Yeah, after she like went on what essentially was like a televised address saying that she was going to go meet with the Justice League.
So basically what happened was she told everyone what the plan was. I'm going to go talk to the surface dwellers and broker a peace. But right before that, I'm going to have a private meeting with my son and his creepy right-hand man. And then they go in there, and then Orm walks out and goes, "Oh my gosh, guys, she totally got murdered by surface dwellers."
Yeah, like I really wish.
What?
I wish they could have, like, I would have loved to hear his explanation. Like, how did a surface dweller get down there and not die? And how did he kill her and then escape? Like, it's clearly the movie just needing that to happen.
Half the Justice League and Arthur go down into Atlantis, and she takes Arthur privately to go see his, like, armor and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Which is, like, this is one of the parts where she says this is your birthright, and it's, like, the king's suit of armor and stuff, and she hasn't put it on. And it technically makes no sense because he has no birthright. But
he is not related to the king at all. That armor should be Orm's. Orm is his son.
Yeah, so that's actually something I wanted. So Arthur puts on this suit of armor, and then he takes it off because he's like, I'm no king. I'm just some thug from Maine or whatever. And he ends up taking off the armor, and what's left is the regular Aquaman stuff, which is the orange shirt, green pants. And now that I'm actually thinking about it, we definitely misordered scenes because it's after he leaves her, he goes up to the surface and they get attacked again, and that's when the Justice League shows up. And then they go back down again and then meet with Orm, who has taken the throne. But so, one thing I wanted to say, Orm has taken the throne, and is arbitrarily wearing his own costume from the comics. Which, if so, we have, what is this, our third instance of over-explaining things and just leading to something that's even more absurd? They've given all this explanation for why Aquaman dresses the way he does. But what you end up with is Orm just arbitrarily having this other king costume that is 100% evil.
Yeah. I mean, it's like just look up Ocean Master on Google Images, and he's straight up evil looking.
And there's never an explanation for him where he says, like, this is our ceremonial war on the surface world king armor, or anything like that. It's just, this is what I wear because in the comics I wear this. But for Aquaman, it's, oh, we got all this other stuff that we got to explain.
Yeah, so they meet with Orm and find out that the queen is dead. And here's another part that only happens because somebody had to write this movie. They show up and find out that she's dead, and I think Mara accuses him of killing her. And then Orm, who, like, literally, I think at this point, like 90 seconds before this, we find out that he's saying that she was killed by a surface dweller. And then they're in this, like, private room with him, and then he's like, yeah, I killed her. Like,
yeah.
Why make the lie if you're just gonna tell people, like, immediately afterwards? And then I'm asking the scriptwriter.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously for convenience because they just didn't have time to give the Justice League another mystery to solve, but it really does make no sense.
So then he, like, traps them in, like, eggs or something with magic.
Yeah, he uses the trident's, like, magic stuff to trap them in these, like, cocoon things.
And then they go, the bad guys go and, like, throw them into some deep trench where they're gonna get eaten by a monster. And then this is where, and while they're gonna go get eaten, Orm is taking the army to the surface to kill everybody on the planet. So then this is where you complained to me while we were watching. Aquaman just suddenly realizes he has powers and realizes how he can use them.
So this moment is, like, completely unearned by this movie, but they dropped in some line about how the trident's magic can only be used by royalty, which again continues to make no sense because, as we've established, Aquaman has 0 royal blood in his veins, unless Atlantis has a weird incestuous thing going on. But so he just, like, magically uncocoons himself, and he does that by basically just closing his eyes and wishing real hard. And then he immediately starts doing his Aquaman, like, controlling animals thing, which we have had no setup for. Like, we had one joke at the beginning of how he's drunkenly talking to this lobster, but it never shows, like, the like, I don't know how you'd call it, like the sonar thing that comes out of his head when he does that power.
That thing.
Yeah, so it doesn't do that when he's talking to the lobster. He never does it before this. He just shows up out of his cocoon and is like, oh yeah, I totally got this, you guys. Ding, 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 ding. Like, what?
Yeah, so then they defeat the monster, and this is where another goof comes in, and it's also not that big of a deal, but I think it's kind of funny. He talks to like a whale, and then he says to Mara, oh, I can talk to fish now. Of course, whales are mammals, not fish. But that's fine, because that's just him talking to sea creatures is just the staple, so it's fine.
Yeah, so now, here's another thing I think makes no sense in this movie, because we cut now to Orm starting his invasion plan, and so he's standing there with his entire army.
Well, no, wait, we had a gripe with something before this. He uses the magic of the trident to, like, send.
That's what I was going to talk about.
But are you going to talk about the Batman line?
Well, I'm going to get to that.
But that happens before the thing that I think you're about to talk about.
No.
Okay, we'll see.
Just let me go.
Go ahead.
So yeah, he uses the magic of the trident to make this giant tidal wave, right? and it's gonna hit like the entire eastern seaboard, and it's massive. Like it's the biggest tidal wave that's ever existed. And so then we cut, like you were talking about. We cut to Justice League headquarters where we have Batman. Who do we have? Batman, Flash,
Shazam.
and Shazam. And they see this happening, and Shazam asks, "Well, we're only three superheroes. How are we gonna stop this?" And Batman says,
We can't. People are going to die.
"Our heroes, everybody.
Superheroes.
It's over. We lost." So, but thankfully for them, Orm happens to be the worst military tactician in the history of the world, because he just created a giant tidal wave that could level whole cities across the entire nation, across the entire world, and just devastate our infrastructure, and just walk in with his military and just own the place. But what does he do, Nick?
The tidal wave comes up real close to the coast of New York City, and then it parts, and then his army is there, and then they manually invade, and then the tidal wave thing just goes away.
Yes, so not only that, they just cold walk up and start shooting their guns and stuff and let the tidal wave just sit there. Let their biggest weapon just sit there. And on top of that, the world's military somehow was ready for that, and they already know they're Atlanteans.
Yeah. The U.S. military is in the streets of New York, facing like the harbor, and then the Atlanteans come up, and the general's like, "Atlanteans, stop!" But literally, like in this movie's time, what had to be 2 hours ago, the only person in the Justice League who knew Atlantis existed was Wonder Woman, and now the military knows that they exist and what they look like, and that they were going to attack.
Yeah, like ostensibly, there's a scene that we're not seeing, where instead of trying to save people, Batman and Flash and Shazam just go to the military and tell them what's about to happen. But what that means is, one, Batman says, "There's a giant tidal wave. You guys are going to need to get some of your soldiers right onto the coast immediately." And two, the generals go, "Oh yeah, you're right, Atlantis is attacking? We'll totally go and set up."
So then they attack. Somehow the rest of the Justice League gets back there.
Yeah, so like they freed themselves from the monsters and they went to go confront Orm to stop his invasion, and Mara's with them and all that.
So then during this fight is when, for a while, we just see the Justice League fighting these ordinary troops. We see Superman save the guy who would eventually become Steel in a little cameo. We see Wonder Woman save Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen, like I said earlier. And then, at this point, Arthur is fighting Black Manta. And I would like to read you a sentence from the Wikipedia plot summary.
Real quick, though, before you do that, I also just want to throw out, we've probably seen about 5 to 10 minutes of Mara, just in this battle alone, doing horrible, horrible things to people.
Yeah, she's killing Atlantean soldiers. We don't see the Justice League doing it, luckily, but keep in mind that she's killing these people, and remember that for like 5 minutes from now. But so here's this sentence about Arthur fighting Black Manta. Arthur fights Black Manta, who reveals his plan to have manipulated Ocean Master and will soon kill him and take over. That is not alluded to at all, ever, in this movie. They just state that. Semicolon. Just as he explains this, he doesn't realize Arthur calling a great white shark to attack him, killing Black Manta. As Black Manta is saying this, the thing comes out of Aquaman's head, and then a huge shark just jumps out of the ocean and eats Black Manta. Killing him. This is a superhero. In his debut, killing a bad guy. Does that sound familiar, DC?
Yeah,
it's like
it's super
fucking
dumb.
Trademark.
It's super, super dumb. And what's like especially dumb about it, one, you have the hero killing the villain, which is always really stupid and I hate that more than anything. But you also have him killing him in like the most anticlimactic way for like a punchline. Like and right before the punchline, you give him this throwaway line to try and like make him seem more villainous than he has been in this movie. Like he's just been Orm's lackey basically throughout this entire movie, and then here he's like, "Oh no, no, I'm about to die, so I have to tell you guys that really I'm the worst villain here."
Yeah, and like you said, it is a laugh line. Like when that happened, I laughed while I was watching it because it
Yeah,
was funny. And then I realized that the shark ate him, and then I was like, oh, that's not funny because he just killed him.
yeah, he just murders him.
So then everybody fights Ocean Master, kung fu movie style, where they all attack him one at a time, and he beats them all. And then,
uh,
yeah, go ahead.
well, yeah. Ocean Master starts fighting Aquaman because he's taken down everyone else, and his troops are still doing stuff. So I think they end up kind of going back to dealing with that. But Aquaman, while he's fighting Ocean Master one on one, he picks up a spear to combat him because Ocean Master has the trident. And Nick, where does he get that spear?
He gets that spear from the back of a dead U.S. soldier.
That's right. He unceremoniously yanks it out of a corpse's back.
And we see blood
And
spatter, and we hear the.
yep, yeah, it's very graphic. It's just right there, and it's never like he doesn't show any signs of like remorse or sympathy or anything. He's just like, "Oh, I need this."
It's so this movie is
It
so
really does make
poorly
me
written.
wonder. It makes me wonder if both like the screenwriter and like the storyboard artists, if like there's secretly sociopaths or something, because there is a lot of excessive violence which no one reacts to.
Yeah, like that's something I've thought about a lot when I watch animated movies and when I watch like live action superhero movies where questionable things happen. Like I'm not joking. Every time I think about Man of Steel, I really, really, really think like, why didn't Henry Cavill say to the scriptwriter, I don't think Superman should kill the bad guy? Because like these people who like are in these movies, whether they're like a voice actor, an actor, or a storyboard person, or like one of the non-main writers, like they have to know this shit is fucked up. So they either must like get shouted down, or they must just not have like the courage to ask these questions.
Yeah, I would imagine for something like Man of Steel, uh, because that idea has sort of been revealed to have been Snyder and Goyer's like decision. Specifically, Snyder said like it should happen, uh, and he was the director of the movie. I would not be surprised if Cavill just wouldn't want to go against the director that way, because this was kind of his first big. It is kind of his biggest movie thing, and I don't know if you want to establish the notion that you, as an actor, are trying to like call all the shots or whatever. But it is a good point. Like the people that are behind this stuff, it does seem like there should be producers or writers or directors or someone who like recognizes how fucked up some of this shit is.
Yeah, so he fights. So Arthur is fighting Ocean Master with, the spear that he got out of a dead soldier, and Batman comes into the scene out of nowhere, pretty much. We hadn't seen him at all during this fight. He comes up to Cyborg, kind of saves Cyborg's life because Cyborg got fucked up pretty bad. I think he got like stabbed in the chest by that spear. And
Yeah.
then, and this is kind of a callback to something that happens at the very beginning of the movie when Cyborg checked out the submarine and then got attacked, and then when the team was like walking through the the wreckage of the submarine, he played back tape that he automatically records through like the red light in his face, in his like forehead, which is part of his like cyborg parts. And then so
Right,
that,
and it played like a hologram, like a three-dimensional
yeah.
recreation of the thing that happened.
So that comes back by Batman. Like Batman asks Cyborg some question, and then Cyborg says that, oh yeah, Ocean Master Orm said that he killed his mom, and then they like project that throughout the whole city. So the clip of Ocean Master nonsensically saying, "Yeah, I killed her,"
Yeah.
to like the entire city. So all the Atlantean soldiers see it, and then Jack, you explain the problem with Mara having killed these soldiers.
Okay, yeah. So during this whole movie, I kind of thought they were either like 100% with Orm the whole time and just were waiting, like they really wished they could go attack the surface world and they just couldn't because the Queen didn't want to. And then when Orm finally took power, they were like, "Shit, yeah, let's go fuck up some guys. I'm glad you killed that Queen," or whatever. So like they seem like they're just 100% evil. Or I thought maybe they were just like monsters or something because they kind of look scary, like their armor looks real scary.
Yeah, their armor
But
makes it so they don't really seem humanoid.
right. So what ends up happening is they see this projection of him confessing to killing the Queen, and they all like throw down their arms and they take off their helmets and they're like, "Fuck that guy," basically. And so basically what that amounts to is Mara was just cutting down swaths of soldiers who were just like doing their jobs, like thinking they were following their patriotic duty of like defending their nation from these violent aggressors. And it turns out they were just being manipulated the whole time, and now they're all dead.
Yeah. And there's never like a scene of Mara like realizing that these soldiers weren't evil, they were being manipulated, now she feels bad. Nothing.
Yeah,
Just all
nobody
those
feels
people
bad.
were like were expendable.
None of them even say like, you're right. We should definitely stop following Orm. But on the other hand, you did murder like 50 or 60 of us.
Yeah, and that's something I want to go to right now. So after that tape plays, Aquaman gives another non-earned speech that ends the war. But so the fighting is over at this point. What do you think the death toll of this movie is? Because there had to be at least like 20 people on that submarine. Mara probably kills like 25 people on screen. We at least know
I
that some.
think Mara kills more than 25 people on screen, and I bet you the working staff of a nuclear submarine like that is going to be more than 25.
Yeah, it was a
I
big
think
submarine.
and I feel like a shitload of U.S. soldiers were killed in this.
Yeah, for sure we know at least two because there were two bodies when you can see him when you can see Aquaman taking the spear out of the body.
Yeah, and when Lois Lane gets attacked, we watch one of their like Humvee things get overrun by Atlanteans, and we watch a guy get killed, don't we?
Oh yeah, you know what? We do. I forgot about that.
So, God, the death toll's got to be high. I mean, it's got to be really high.
Like do you think it's more than it can't be more than 100, right? Like how many people do you think staff a nuclear submarine? Like I guess 25. Do you think it's more like 30, 40?
Yeah, 30 maybe sounds about right.
Okay,
And
so there's
I really honestly think Mira maybe kills 50 people.
okay, so then that's 80, and for sure at least 6 people died in that Humvee, and then so yeah, there had at least 100 people die in this movie, almost on screen. That's the on-screen. The
100
on-screen death
people.
toll is around.
Let's go back to this. 100 people, yes, 100 people on-screen death toll. 100% innocent people thinking that they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, U.S. soldiers in a submarine getting attacked by evil people. Um, although I would say that the Atlantean soldiers who attack Aquaman, Arthur, those seem to be people under Orm's thumb because that obviously wasn't a general attack. But who knows? We'll just count them as innocent too. So yeah, at least 100 innocent people died in this movie.
Yeah, even if you take that group off the toll, that was only what, like 15 or 20 people. That's still like 80 people.
Yeah. So then after the battle, we cut to later in Atlantis, and Aquaman is crowned as king. Another unearned thing where he gives this really big speech.
We've seen like two extremes of Aquaman in this movie. We've seen like the broody, like, I don't want to do any of this because I'm just some schmuck Aquaman, and then we've seen I am the king Aquaman, and he never, like, there's no progression there. Like, it feels like a screenwriter wrote this thing and then remembered, oh, in in a narrative, your main character is supposed to go through some kind of change. I guess that means he just has to be the complete opposite of who he was without any kind of progression or learning or anything by the end of the movie.
Yeah, it's like if you read the first chapter of a book and then just the last chapter of the book.
Yeah.
So we see him giving a speech, unearned, not a very good speech either. He kind of swims over to the Justice League because the Justice League is all there. They say he needs a code name. Shazam says it should be Aquaman. Aquaman hates it, of course, because of course it's a new 52 comic, so nobody
Right.
can have any fun. And then, like you said, they finally realize they need to be a team. Batman says he's got an idea for a satellite watchtower. And then there's like this thing where they find out that these monsters are attacking, so Aquaman and Mera go and fight them with a bunch of fish that Aquaman talks to, and then the movie ends. And then there's a post-credit scene where Ocean Master / Orm is in jail at Bel Rev. You would think that he would be in prison in Atlantis because he did assassinate the Queen, but whatever, he also waged war in the surface world, so I guess I could see why he would be on a surface world prison. The thing I didn't get about that was in his prison, in his cell, he has a big, like, tank of water, which you would think that, like, I guess unless he needs it to, like, breathe, which is never really established if Atlantean people can't breathe on Earth. You would think not, because Mera spends a fair amount of time above the surface. But that seems like a bad idea.
I think the idea is that Atlanteans can survive on the surface, but they need to be in water like most of the time. Like, they can survive on the surface for brief periods, but mostly they need to be in the water. But that is not anywhere inside this movie at all.
Yeah, that's all assumptions. The audience having to do the movie's work for us.
But so what I wanted to say about this is, I didn't think about it, but about him probably should have been in an Atlantean prison. But even if he's in a surface prison because of waging war on the surface, why is he in like a regular human criminal jail?
As opposed to
Like, is this, as opposed to, like, I don't know, like a military prison, or like, where do we keep those guys?
like Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah, like, if you commit war crimes, you're not going into like a regular high security prison with other just regular criminals, are you?
No, but I mean, Bel Rev is, and this is another thing that the movie doesn't establish, but like if you read comics or watch Young Justice, you kind of know Bel Rev is kind of like a super villain prison. So
I guess
it
that
kinda makes sense. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
does he even have superpowers?
I mean, I think all Atlanteans have a certain amount of strength and invulnerability. Well, yeah, I mean, even then you could get like just a thick-walled prison, and it doesn't seem like he'd be able to bust out. But yeah, I guess it makes sense that but Bel Rev is a super villain prison, but that's never really established, like you said.
So then he's swimming around in his tank, yelling at the guy who just gave him his food. Lex Luthor walks up and says, "I have a proposal for you to consider." And then the movie ends. So,
Yeah, that's our obligatory teaser for the next one.
and now Jack and I were both relieved because the New 52 Justice League arc after Throne of Atlantis was Trinity War, which is even by New 52 standards is a piece of shit. Like especially a piece of shit.
Yeah, like
So,
it's not even a story. There's no plot to it.
did
It's
you read
just
any of it?
I did not. I read reviews about from
Yeah, I
each
read the
issue.
first few issues, and yeah, there's little to nothing actually happens in that story. So we were concerned
And
that this
so
teaser was going to be a teaser for a Trinity War movie, but this isn't one. It seems to be setting up, like you said, Forever Evil, where this is a tease setting up the like Society of Supervillains or whatever they were called back there, whatever they were called in that
yeah,
story.
something.
So which is
We'll
fine.
end up seeing next year, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll find out soon enough. So all in all, this movie sucks pretty much.
Yeah, this is by far, if not the worst, it's one of the worst movies. One of the worst of these DC animated movies. It's just there is like nothing good about it.
Yeah, the the only thing I thought was good, and I sent you a text message about this when we were watching it. Um, I thought some of the action was good, but I think I sent that moments before Marriage started killing people, and that obviously the action is okay, but the fact that she kills everybody she fights kind of takes it down, takes it down a notch because superhero killing
Yeah, like
bad
it's
guys.
like it's well choreographed action, it's well animated, there's cool moves that these characters are doing, but it is undermined heavily by the fact that everything she does, which tends to be some of the cooler stuff, is excessively violent.
Yeah, and there's a lot in this
Like
movie.
excessive.
Yeah, it like and like I said, the another recent DC movie, the aforementioned Assault on Arkham, is also incredibly violent. But again, that's the Suicide Squad. This is the Justice League. There should be a
Yeah, Suicide
large
Squad is
difference
a
in the
bunch
amount
of
of
killers.
violence. So, like, oh my God, Jack, we never talked about the Superman line that I thought you were gonna have a seizure over.
Oh God, you're right. Okay, I blocked it out. I mentally blocked it out because it makes me so angry. I was literally angry for like 20 to 30 minutes after watching this movie because of this line. So, after they bust out of those cocoons and defeat the monster, uh, I believe it Wonder Woman or Wonder Woman asks Superman if he's okay or something, and he says to her that he's fine, but that he wants to shove Orm's trident down his throat.
Superman,
Superman said that.
the
Superman
greatest superhero.
wants to wants to violently murder the bad guy in this movie in an incredibly graphic manner.
I will record that and cut it in at the very end of this episode, just so you know we are not lying about that. Um,
We are 100% serious. Superman says that line.
it's ridiculous. Like again, like that. Uh, Anybody involved in this movie who heard lines, who edited lines, who wrote the lines, who said the lines, should have looked at that line in the script, looked at the name above it, and said no.
Yeah.
Jerry
Yeah.
O'Connell voiced Superman, and he should have walked off the figurative set when he saw that.
I mean,
Like,
the voice director of this movie is Andrea Romano, and she's been the voice director of like every single one of their movies, and was like the voice director on the Justice League animated show, which is amazing. Like,
and his animated show, I'm pretty sure, because I thought at one point
yeah,
I think she's been the voice director of almost every single thing they've ever done.
I think so.
So like how? The only explanation is that they're staying true to New 52 Superman, which they pretty much are, but that should disgust everyone involved in this movie.
It is really terrible. But yeah, okay, so I guess we'll go to we'll talk about some voice acting. There are some good names in here. Like, you said Jerry O'Connell was Superman. Rosario Dawson was Wonder Woman, and she wasn't terrible. Shamar Moore is Cyborg, and he was real good.
Yeah, I like him as Cyborg a lot. I hope that they keep him around for all Cyborg related things.
Yeah, and Nathan Fillion was Green Lantern again, which is always amazing because he's the best for Green Lantern.
I think Jason O'Mara is Batman, and he's been Batman in the most recent Batman stuff, and he sounded really bad in this movie. I haven't minded him in other movies, but I don't know, he seemed very sleepy.
He always seems very sleepy, and it's particularly sad because I think you and I, in some of our favorite Batman animated stuff, we know two of the best Batman voice actors who will ever live, probably.
Yeah, we know only
number
one is from I'm blanking on his name too.
It's Kevin Conroy.
Yeah.
But he was the voice in Batman the Animated Series. He was the voice in the Justice League Animated Series. He was the voice in the Arkham video games we talked about. He is the definitive Batman voice of our generation, and probably will be for many generations, I would imagine. Just because he's perfect. And then in Young Justice, he was voiced by Bruce Greenwood, right?
Yeah, and he also did the voice in Doom, Justice League Doom, Batman Under the Red Hood, some of the middle era DC animated movies.
Yeah, and he's awesome. And then Jason O'Mara has been in Justice League War, and he was in Son of Batman, and then he was in this, and then he's gonna be again in Batman vs. Robin in a few months. But it just doesn't compare.
Voice acting, especially when you have icons in a role, can kind of tank movies when they aren't in that role. Jack and I, either before or after we were watching Throne of Atlantis, we had a conversation about what our favorite DC animated movies were. And I personally love Batman Under the Red Hood. I think all the voice acting in that is really good, except for the guy who voices the Joker. And he is fucking terrible. And if he was voiced by Mark Hamill or anybody good, or Troy Baker, which that was before Troy Baker, but still, if he was voiced by Mark Hamill, that would be my favorite DC animated movie. But he's not. He's voiced by a piece of shit. So it's not.
He's voiced by John DiMaggio, who fans of Futurama will recognize as Bender, and he's in Adventure Time. He voices Jake the dog, and he's a well-known and popular voice actor. He just didn't do a good job as the Joker in that particular movie. And I think a big part of that is because Mark Hamill is the Joker in the same capacity that Kevin Conroy is Batman. They were both from Batman the Animated Series, and they just have become the definitive takes on the character voice-wise. And really, you mentioned Troy Baker, and he's really just doing a Mark Hamill Joker impression. He's not doing anything different, which is perfectly fine because it's perfect.
So voice acting obviously is very important in an animated movie because it's the acting part. So the acting in this is okay. I didn't mind the guy who voiced Aquaman.
Yeah, he was fine.
So I think
Sam Witwer did the voice of Ocean Master, and I really liked him.
What else has he been in? I don't recognize the name.
He voiced Darth Maul in that Clone Wars show, and was amazing in that. And he's the voice of the guy from those Star Wars Force Unleashed games, which I've never played, but
okay.
He's done voice acting here and there.
Yeah, I've seen him in a show on Sci-Fi.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think we have really much else to say.
Yeah. So wrapping it up.
This
movie was a huge disappointment.
Yeah.
Do not. Please don't.
Also, if you want to have a good laugh, look up the cover of it. I might include a link to that too. It's comically bad. It's like this painting.
Yeah, it's not
pretty ugly.
It's not very good.
So yeah. Yeah. This has been the Super Serial Bros podcast. Well, we should hopefully have one up again. I know it's obviously been a very long time since our last episode, but we should have one again in like a week or two, depending on our schedules. And we're planning on something comparing Dawn of Justice and Captain America: Civil War, but we're kind of waiting on a couple more pieces of news to drop on either of those before we actually do it. And then we'll also go ahead.
I would like to do, after this non-stop wine fest, we should come up with a topic of more positive variety.
Yeah, another thing we were doing, and this may be positive, maybe not, but it would probably be a lot more comical. Jack and I are planning on watching the first episode of the short-lived WB show Birds of Prey, and also the pilot of the also short-lived CBS Flash show from the early 90s. And then we're going to talk about that. So that should probably be entertaining. But yeah.
And I'm sure we'll do some more comics reviews at some point as well.
Yeah, once Spider-Verse wraps up in a couple weeks, we might talk about that. Yeah, maybe talk about our hopes and fears about this Battle Worlds thing that's going on in Marvel's comic.
Oh, I don't care about that. I have no interest.
Okay, then I guess we won't be talking about that.
I want to talk about good stuff. Like I just read. Well, this could be a topic later. But yeah, so this has been our show.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Thanks for checking it out.
I'm Nick Scioli, formerly known as Dominic Scioli, but I've dropped that name back to Nick Scioli like I was for the first 13, 14 years of my life. Yeah, and my brother is Jack.
That is me.
So yeah, thanks for listening, and have a good day.
Are you okay?
Fine, but I'm going to shove that magic shrimp fork down Orm's throat.